My girlfriend told me she didn't feel the same way anymore. What she didn't tell me was that she had become embarrassed to be seen with me. I found that out at a friend's engagement party when she asked me to take the group picture so I wouldn't have to be in it. Months later, after she left, I would lose the weight. But that wasn't the transformation that changed my life. The real transformation began when I finally admitted that food had never been my biggest problem. My name is Alex. I'm 27 years old, and this is the story of how losing the person I loved most forced me to stop abandoning myself. 3 years ago, I was a different person. I worked as a graphic designer at a small advertising company. I went to the gym a few times a week. I played guitar badly but enthusiastically. And I had been dating Alexandra since our final year of college. We were the kind of couple people assumed had everything figured out. We took weekend trips. We posted good pictures. We laughed easily in public. We talked about moving into a bigger apartment, getting married eventually, and maybe having children once our careers felt more stable. I believed that was what love looked like: stability, companionship, a shared routine you could count on. But our relationship didn't fall apart because of one dramatic event. It started quietly. First came stress, then anxiety, then a heaviness I carried everywhere, even when nothing specific was happening. My father became ill. It wasn't the kind of illness that arrived suddenly and disappeared after a few difficult weeks. It became part of our family's everyday life. Doctor appointments, test results, medication changes, phone calls that made my stomach tighten before I even answered. At the same time, the company where I worked began cutting expenses. People disappeared from the office one by one. A meeting invitation would appear on someone's calendar, and an hour later, their desk would be empty. Management called it restructuring. The rest of us called it waiting for our turn. I started waking up in the middle of the night with my heart racing. I would lie beside Alexandra and stare at the ceiling, calculating how long my savings would last if I lost my job. Then I would think about my father, then the hospital bills, then whether Alexandra would still want a future with someone who couldn't keep his life under control. I didn't know how to ask for help. I had never learned how. In my family, men dealt with problems by staying quiet and working harder. You didn't say you were frightened. You didn't say you felt overwhelmed. You certainly didn't say that sometimes you sat in your car after work because you couldn't find the energy to drive home. So I started eating instead. Not because I was hungry, because eating gave my mind something simple to focus on. A burger after work became a habit. 2 slices of pizza before bed became 4. Breakfast became whatever was fast and heavy enough to make me feel numb. I ate without tasting much of anything. For a few minutes, the noise in my head would stop. Then the guilt would start. I would promise myself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would wake up early. Tomorrow I would go back to the gym. Tomorrow I would become the version of myself everyone remembered. But every tomorrow looked exactly like the day before it. In less than a year, my body changed significantly. My clothes stopped fitting. Walking upstairs left me out of breath. I avoided mirrors, but I became hyper-aware of every reflective surface: store windows, elevator doors, the black screen of my computer before it turned on. The hardest part wasn't simply gaining weight. It was feeling as though I had disappeared inside a body I no longer recognized. At first, Alexandra tried to be supportive. She told me it was only a difficult period. She said she was worried about my health. She suggested that we start cooking together and going for walks after dinner. Sometimes I agreed. Most of the time, I found an excuse. I'm exhausted. Maybe tomorrow. I had a terrible day. She would nod and let it go. Looking back, I can admit that being with me during that period wasn't easy. I was distant. I was irritable. I rejected help while secretly resenting people for not helping me enough. Alexandra was not responsible for fixing me. But there was a difference between being unable to save someone and becoming ashamed of them. And slowly, I began to notice that shame. She stopped reaching for my hand in public. She stopped taking pictures with me. If I suggested going out with friends, she would say she was tired. Then, a few hours later, she would get dressed and go without me. I thought you were tired. I am, but Olivia really wants me to go. I can come. She hesitated. You don't even like those places anymore. I never said that. You're always uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable because you act like you don't want me there. She sighed. Alex, please don't start. So, I didn't go. That happened more often than I wanted to admit. The moment that confirmed everything came at our friend Eric's engagement party. Eric had booked a private room at a restaurant. There were around 15 people there, most of whom had known Alexandra and me since college. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. I made conversation, I laughed at the right moments. I tried not to notice that Alexandra was sitting farther away from me than usual. Then someone suggested taking a group picture. Everyone moved toward a decorated wall near the back of the room. I stood up to join them. Alexandra handed me her phone. Can you take it? I looked at her. Why don't we ask the server? He's busy. There are other people who could take it. Alex, it's just a picture. Something in her tone made me stop. I took the phone. Everyone gathered together. Alexandra stood in the center beside Eric and his fiancée. She smiled more brightly for that photograph than she had smiled at me in months. I took several pictures. Then one of our friends said, "Wait, Alex should be in one too." Before I could respond, Alexandra said, "It's fine, he hates pictures now." I didn't hate pictures. I hated what they had started to reveal about how she saw me. Later that evening, I went outside to get some air. Through the partially open door, I heard Olivia talking to Alexandra. Why didn't you let Alex get in the picture? There was a pause. Then Alexandra lowered her voice. I know this sounds horrible. I froze. But everyone remembers what he looked like before. I don't want people asking me what happened to him. Olivia didn't answer immediately. Alexandra continued. And I don't want that picture all over social media. I already feel guilty enough. I walked away before I heard anything else. I stood in the parking lot, pretending to look at my phone. My face felt hot. My hands were shaking. I wasn't angry because Alexandra noticed that I had changed. I had noticed too. I was angry because she was protecting herself from the embarrassment of being associated with me. When she came outside, she acted as though nothing had happened. Are you ready to go? I looked at her. Were you ever going to tell me? Tell you what? That you're embarrassed by me. Her expression changed. I never said that. I heard you. She looked back toward the door. How much did you hear? Enough. Alex, I was frustrated. You didn't want me in a picture because people might ask what happened to me. That isn't what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. She crossed her arms. What do you want me to say? The truth. The truth? Yes. She looked at me for several seconds. Then she said it. The truth is that you're not the same person anymore. I swallowed. I know. No, you don't. You've stopped caring about everything. Your health, your clothes, your work, us. I'm struggling. I know you're struggling. Then why are you treating me like something you need to hide? Because every time I try to help you, you shut me out. That doesn't answer the question. She looked exhausted, and then she said, sometimes I don't know how to be seen with you without feeling like everyone is wondering why I'm still here. That sentence hurt more than anything else she could have said. We drove home in silence. For the next several weeks, we continued living together as though the conversation had never happened, but something had already ended. She slept closer to the edge of the bed. I stopped changing clothes in front of her. We spoke about groceries, bills, and whose turn it was to clean the kitchen. We stopped speaking about the future. Then one evening, Alexandra came home and sat across from me. She didn't take off her coat. That was how I knew. Alex, I don't feel the same anymore. I stared at the floor. What does that mean? It means I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I'm not asking you to pretend. You keep saying you're going to get help, but nothing changes. I've been trying. You go to the gym twice and stop. You eat well for 3 days and stop. You promise me you're going to talk to someone, but you never call." She wasn't wrong. That was what made it harder. "I don't know how to help you," she said. "I'm not asking you to fix me, but I feel like I'm drowning beside you." I looked at her. "Are you leaving because I gained weight?" She closed her eyes briefly. "It isn't only the weight. That means the weight is part of it. I'm not physically attracted to you anymore." There it was. No careful language, no vague explanation, just the truth. I felt humiliated, but I also felt strangely calm. "Did you ever love me?" I asked. "Or did you love the version of me that looked good beside you?" "That's unfair. So was making me take your picture because you didn't want me in it." She started crying. "I'm sorry." I believed her. I still believe she was sorry. But being sorry doesn't undo what someone has revealed about how they see you. Alexandra packed a bag that night and stayed with Olivia. She returned several days later for the rest of her things. There was no screaming, no broken furniture, no final dramatic speech, just boxes moving through a doorway and the quiet realization that a life I thought was permanent had ended in less than a week. After she left, I sat in my car for nearly 2 hours. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. At first, I felt shame, then anger, then an exhaustion so deep it seemed to live inside my bones. When I finally cried, I cried for my father, for my job, for Alexandra, for the version of myself I had been pretending I could recover through willpower alone. The following morning, I called a therapist. I almost hung up while the phone was ringing. When the receptionist answered, I told her I wanted to schedule an appointment before I could change my mind. I walked into that first session expecting to talk about food. I assumed the therapist would tell me to track my meals, control my portions, and develop better discipline. Instead, she asked me when the eating had started. I told her about my father, the layoffs, the sleepless nights, the fear of disappointing everyone. I told her how I ate whenever I felt anxious and then hated myself afterward. She listened. Then she said, "Alex, it sounds like you're not eating because you're hungry. You're eating so you don't have to feel what's happening underneath." That sentence dismantled every excuse I had built. Food wasn't the original wound. It was the bandage I kept replacing without ever cleaning what was underneath it. Therapy did not transform me overnight. For the first few weeks, I hated it. Talking made me feel exposed. I wanted clear instructions and fast results. Instead, I had to learn how to recognize what I was feeling before I tried to escape from it. Sometimes I still ate too much. Sometimes I missed appointments. Sometimes I walked for 20 minutes and rewarded myself by ordering enough food for 3 people. But I stopped treating every mistake as proof that I was hopeless. That mattered more than I understood at the time. I started walking for 5 minutes after work, then 10, then 20. Eventually, I returned to the gym, but this time I wasn't exercising because I hated my body. I was exercising because moving helped me think. I learned to prepare simple meals. I started sleeping better. I visited my father without pretending I was stronger than I felt. I told a close friend that I was going to therapy. He didn't laugh. He said, "I'm glad you finally told someone." The weight came off slowly. There was no dramatic montage, no sudden six-pack, no single morning when I woke up and became a new person. Some months went well, others didn't. But gradually I began to recognize myself again. Not the old Alex, someone more honest. A year after Alexandra left, I picked up my guitar again. I started meeting friends instead of avoiding them. I stopped assuming that everyone who looked at me was judging me. Most importantly, I stopped believing that my value rose and fell with the number on a scale. One night, I recorded a short video on my phone. I talked about emotional eating. I talked about how many men are taught to hide fear until it escapes through anger, alcohol, food, or complete emotional withdrawal. I uploaded the video to a small social media account. It received 43 views. 3 of them were probably mine. I posted another one the following week, then another. For months, almost no one watched. A few videos received a couple hundred views. Most disappeared immediately. But occasionally, one man would send me a message. I thought I was the only one. I haven't told anyone what I'm going through. How did you ask for help without feeling weak? Those messages kept me posting. I wasn't a therapist, I made that clear. I was only someone sharing what had helped me and encouraging other men to speak to qualified professionals instead of suffering in silence. Almost a year after I posted my first video, I uploaded one called "Sometimes the weight is not the problem, it's the evidence." In the video, I explained that my body had shown what my mouth refused to admit. I was overwhelmed, I was frightened, and I needed help. That video was shared by a mental health organization. Then a fitness coach reacted to it. Then several larger pages reposted part of it. Within a week, it had been viewed more than 1 million times. My phone filled with messages, not just from men who struggled with food, but from people who had used work, alcohol, gambling, exercise, and relationships to avoid feelings they didn't know how to process. That was when I realized my story was no longer only mine. I started a small channel focused on men's emotional health, not as an expert, as a person willing to describe the things I had once been too ashamed to say out loud. Several months later, Alexandra messaged me. "I saw your video. I'm glad you're doing well. You seem like yourself again." I read the message more than once. The old version of me would have searched every word for regret. I would have wanted her to admit that leaving me had been a mistake. Instead, I felt calm. I replied, "Thank you. I hope you're doing well too." She asked if I would meet her for coffee. I considered saying no. Then I realized I no longer needed to avoid her. We met at a cafe near our old apartment. She looked mostly the same. I didn't. Not because I had lost weight, because I was no longer watching her face for evidence that I was worthy of being there. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I apologized before, not properly. I waited. I was cruel to you," she said, "especially at Eric's party. I told myself I was frustrated because you wouldn't accept help. But I was also worried about how other people saw me. That was selfish. I appreciated the honesty." "You were allowed to leave," I said. "You weren't responsible for saving me, but I didn't leave honestly. I withdrew from you, hid you, and made you feel ashamed before I admitted the relationship was over." "Yes," she looked down at her coffee. "I'm sorry. I believe you." We sat quietly for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" "No." She looked surprised. "But I'm not lonely," I added. "There's a difference." She smiled faintly. "You really have changed." I had to. For a second, I wondered whether she had asked to meet because she wanted another chance. But I didn't ask. I didn't need to know. Some doors do not need to be slammed dramatically. They only need to remain closed. We finished our coffee. Before leaving, Alexandra hugged me. I hugged her back. There was no revenge, no victory, just forgiveness without reconciliation. And that was enough. Today I am healthier than I was then. Physically, yes, but more importantly, mentally. I still have difficult days. I still feel anxiety. I still sometimes catch myself searching for ways to escape uncomfortable emotions. The difference is that now I recognize what I'm doing. I pause. I speak. I ask for help. I no longer expect food, exercise, success, or another person to rescue me from feelings I refuse to face. I don't believe Alexandra was an evil person. She reached the limit of what she could handle, and she had every right to end the relationship. But she also chose to hide her discomfort behind distance and humiliation. Both things can be true. Someone can have the right to leave you and still leave in a way that causes unnecessary harm. Forgiving Alexandra did not mean pretending that what she did was acceptable. It meant accepting that I no longer needed her apology in order to move forward. And losing her did not save my life by itself. What saved me was finally deciding that I was worth helping, even after someone else stopped choosing me. So let me ask you honestly, do you think Alexandra was wrong for leaving when Alex refused to get help? Or was the real betrayal the way she became ashamed of him before she finally ended the relationship? And would you have agreed to meet her for coffee after everything that happened? Drop your verdict in the comments. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who may be struggling in silence. Because here, one story always leads to another.